Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Chris Before Coffee. And today we are going to talk about illegal fiction. So I posted up a little bit earlier on Twitter that I wasn't quite sure if there was a bright line distinction between corporate personhood and a government. I kind of see government as kind of a company or an industry with a failing business model, with a revenue model that is broken and is finding it difficult to compete. But essentially what you're talking about is a group of individuals taking cover behind a brand. Like, I don't care if it's a flag, the Starbucks logo, an old book that you think has all the answers to how you should live your life. You're essentially talking about a group of individuals agreeing on a sequence of activities in the future to bring about some kind of aim. But at the same time, you're also hiding a lot of things. So behind every company, behind every flag and every brand, there are also back-channel communications, things that take place on email, things that take place in the corridors, misaligned incentives, expectations that are often mismanaged or often very different across the actual employee base. So essentially, you're talking about a group of individuals trying to make another group of individuals perform some action that is advantageous to them, the people inside of the company. And I'm drawing our attention to this stunt that was pulled off recently on Brooklyn Bridge in New York. Did you hear about this, Nick?
Yeah, I have, but I last I read they didn't know who had done it, and they were still investigating or starting an investigation. I think it's awesome, though. I'm
So,
not sure who did it, but whoever did it, that's awesome.
so this is a bleached white American flag that was put up as some kind of elaborate art project. The New York police are claiming this is one of the possibilities. It's kind of like a Banksy stunt, right? Where you're putting up a bleached version of like a surrendered, a surrendered American flag. And I just kind of felt like this just really resonates right now. I also want to draw people's attention to this tweet the other day, where I was talking about the fact that you could look at Russia Today in one eye, and you could be watching CNN with the other eye, and you'd actually be transported to a new dimension, right? Because they're giving you such polar opposite views. They've got these very, very competing agendas. On the one hand, you have Russia Today's Abby Martin, who we'll talk about in a little bit, reporting that her Wikipedia article had been edited to say that she was just a shill for the Kremlin, and that Russia Today was funded by the Russian government and it couldn't be trusted. And then on the other side, you've got Wikipedia articles being edited by the Russian government. And in the middle of all of this, you've got these Twitter bots that automatically monitor Wikipedia articles for IP addresses that have made changes from a lot of these institutions. And we have more polarization. I mean, it was actually commented on the other day in our video that I wasn't giving enough airtime. Someone said, and actually kind of rightly, they said that I was talking too much about flight MH17 and I wasn't talking enough about the Israeli-Gaza conflict. And they're right, but the reason why I don't is because I like to know what I'm talking about, before I start talking. And whenever this issue of Israel and Palestine comes up, I find it really difficult because there's so much to go through, there's so much history, and the people involved in this conflict who are there firsthand, they're embroiled in a memory, a shared communal memory, where they don't want to forget the past. So in order to talk about this intelligently, I've got to go online and I've got to do a lot of research. I've got to use a lot of intuition. I've got to make sure that I'm not being lied to by a lot of these sources that also have an axe to grind. And that was the only reason why I didn't want to talk about it more, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. As long as I feel like we can have an intelligent discussion that doesn't end up descending into one side versus the other, because the way I see it, the action, if you went around Gaza and Israel right now and you started interviewing people, individuals on the ground, and you asked for their true opinions of what's going on, most of them probably wouldn't condone the violence, and most of them would say, look, we need to find another way around this. It's just a group of individuals that wield the most influence at the top that are performing a lot of these actions.
Yeah, that's a really touchy situation over there. Like you said, it goes back 1,000 years, about 2,000 years of infighting in that region. So, I mean, every time that an occurrence is kicked off and they start fighting against each other, there's always something that, at that moment that leads up to it, but it always goes back deeper on what really set them off. I think this time around, though, I've done a little bit of research on the rockets that Hamas is firing. I'm pretty sure, though, a good amateur rocketeer here in the United States could make those rockets. They don't seem all that impressive. There's videos of them just crashing into the ground and not even exploding. One hit a tree, and a cat jumped out of the tree and ran away. So they seem totally ineffective.
I just want to
right,
quote,
they seem like really ineffective, and the retaliation. Like, I'm all for self-defense, and if I felt that I was being threatened, I would defend myself. But the amount of retaliation that seems to be coming from Israel right now seems a bit more excessive than what they had been, going against. Like, oh, we need to get rid of all these rocket launch sites. So they went and targeted 400 rocket launch sites. But then thousands and thousands of more rockets come over, and I'm like, how many rocket launch sites does Hamas have? Are these just mobile guys running from house to house shooting rockets? Are they even setting up at places?
Right, but Nick, I want to pull the discussion back before we even get that far. It's not that I disagree. This was the comment by Crypto Coin User. I just want to give a little hat tip to him. So Chris spent a good chunk of time wondering how someone can shoot a missile at an airplane flying overhead, but neglected to mention the thousands of missiles filed into population centers of certain state in the past few weeks, months, and years, with the stated purpose of killing as many people as possible. Oh, and the state on the receiving end of those missiles is commonly known as Israel. And I just want to pull this discussion back a little bit, because I don't feel like this conversation is going to get anywhere until we can start to trust some of the information that we're getting. Because Andy Carvin has this term, NPR journalists, I think he coined it, as distance journalism or citizen journalism, where I find it very, very difficult anymore to talk about any of these important news stories that are coming out, because the only information I have access to is filtered information. And where I'm spending a lot of my time now is in IRC channels, in Reddit forums, and I'm digging and digging through these posts and these forum posts, just trying to look for some first-hand account that is verifiable. And I'm starting to see the beginnings of, I don't want to say because everyone has an agenda, because everyone has agency, and everyone determines their own wills. But if you bring your own beliefs, if you already understand yourself as someone who is critical of the state of Israel, for example, then everything you say is going to be imbued with that belief. And I don't think enough people are getting around what Kierkegaard, the philosopher, called leveling, and Heidegger called leveling down, which is when you speak to someone as if you've always known this. You speak to somebody as if this has always been true. Like, I always knew that Tripoli was the capital of Libya, right? The news anchor always presents you with the story as if it's all done and wrapped up. But what you don't see is all the stuff that goes on backstage. This is a theatre production that you are watching. I mean, it literally is. There are cameras, there are lights. And I've noticed recently that companies like the BBC and also Abby Martin's Breaking the Set on Russia Today, they now break the fourth wall, right? The camera actually pulls back so that you can see all the studio lighting, so that you can see that it's an actual set, in an attempt, I think, to help reassure the viewer that, yeah, okay, this isn't real life, and the news doesn't just stop after the production finishes, right? This continues going on. But I still feel like we're heading towards a kind of many speaks to many approach, where it's okay for more and more people to talk without the whole discourse falling into chaos. And speaking of which, by the way, if you do have any opinions on this, of course, there is the Q&A in the bottom left-hand corner. I'd love to hear more for you. But Nick, your thoughts?
But I think you can tell a lot by what someone's telling you, right? Like, for instance, if CNBC keeps saying the same thing over and over again, and then they give you another piece of information, you might be able to construct that they've been fucking lying, right? So, I mean, the more somebody talks, the more they're bound to get caught up in a lie if they're lying. So I think it's good to, take the state sources for what they are. Like you said, though, you need to keep that perspective that there is other things going on, and that they are trying to paint you a picture. They want a picture that's painted for them. You know what I mean? But
so the internet has created this new currency of attention, right? That where you pay now with your attention, because you could be doing anything with that moment that you're spending right now. And it's almost like an unspoken informal economy that we've accrued, where the people in charge are the people that frame the debate. As Carl Schmitt, the political philosopher, 20th century Nazi political philosopher, said, the sovereign is defined as he who sets the emergency, as he who defines the emergency. And for a lot of younger people now who don't remember life before the mobile phone, don't remember life before the internet, the first thing they wake up to is their social media news feeds, right? The Facebook, Google, Twitter are defining the emergency, the emergent urgency, the thing that you need to care about right now as opposed to anywhere else. And the biggest risk that I see is that we all turn into automatons. We turn into robots. We're not able to use our intuition and look beyond the message and say, okay, what am I hearing now? Am I hearing that it's true that a bunch of Russian rebels, separatists, just shot down a flight over Ukraine? Or am I hearing that someone wants me to believe that Russian separatists shot down a plane?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a good point, Chris. I agree with you. There's always somebody trying to sell you something, I guess, a worldview or a world perspective. I like to try to think that I live in two worlds. I have like the one in my head that I create out of all the information I gather, and then the one we all exist in and together. And sometimes I try to like find where they overlap.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We spend a lot of time in our heads, and we rehearse conversations. We have counterfactual hallucinations where we say all the things we wish we'd said to the boss in that meeting, when we were being yelled at and humiliated in front of our friends and our colleagues. And so I don't really see why we're not more conscious of this fact. The games that we play with each other. And that now you're entering a world, we've got a few things, a few circumstances all coming into alignment. You've got a growing number of people that are unemployed, some of them self-unemployed like me, who actually, even though I'm perfectly qualified, I deliberately opt out of the job market because none of these companies really represent my values and beliefs, and most of the things that I really care about and want to be remembered for don't pay. There just isn't a revenue model. So all I'm left with is the attempt to build a revenue model and actually change the culture. And as a result, what I'm seeing is, so a lot of people unemployed, a lot of people with spare time on their hands, and more discretionary information flying at us from social media. The internet actually says to you, you better know how to spend your time effectively, because I'm going to give you, and the truth is there if you want it, if you want to recognize it. But if not, have all this eye candy. Just switch off, just subscribe to Alex Jones and just accept that everything that guy says is true. Or just believe this other thing over here. But no one is, like, I don't know about you, I deliberately follow Twitter accounts that I disagree with.
Yes, I do too.
Just so that I can get that, like, I might be wrong about this,
The thing is I end up getting involved with them and they end up blocking me, and I'm like, oh. But,
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't always work out for me. I've been blocked. Max Kaiser has me blocked. If he ever hears this, Max Kaiser, unblock me. I'm a fan. I watch his show like all the time. I wish he would unblock me.
Why is he blocking you? Max Kaiser's blocking. Breaking news right here. What is that?
Coin, because of Max Coin. Because I gave him shit for the pump and dump on Max Coin.
Oh yeah.
Because he was spreading a lot of FUD around the time, because we have this new algorithm, it's going to keep it decentralized because Bitcoin's getting centralized, and all these other things that were going on to pump his coin up, and the failed launch and just all that stuff. I was kind of ripping into him on Twitter, and he banned me or blocked me for that.
Yeah. So we have a question here from Steve. Let me get it up. So I've got this fangled technology. It's called Photoshop. Screen grab the question, and then everyone can see it. So Steve Zilber, I think, you follow me, Steve, on Twitter. Thank you very much. And we were discoursing a little bit earlier about this. So government hides behind guns and uses those guns to tax its people. It's a monopoly on force. This goes for all governments. No, I'm not just going to disagree with that, But I think what we were talking about earlier was that I said to Steve, look, there is not a bright line distinction between a government and a business, or a government or a corporate entity, corporate, corpus, a body. But in law, you have this notion of the legal fiction, where lawyers agree. In the UK, you've got like Solomon v. Solomon, 19th century case law, where the lawyers say, look, to all intents and purposes, let's treat these companies as if they're people. Yes, we know that they're not philosophically actually people, but let's call them people for the purposes of this discussion. And I just think that's a cover-up. I don't think that captures the whole truth. And I think that it has many, many negative externalities.
It makes it easy so we don't have to go and create all these new definitions and words to use for this thing. We'll just make it easy. We'll call it a person, use all the same rules, same things. We don't have to create new laws, blah, 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 blah. It's easy. I think, like you said, it was a cop-out.
Well, okay, let's frame the debate this way. Let's make this a little bit more progressive and positive. So the reason why, part of the reason why I'm very interested in this at the moment, is that I'm looking into distributed autonomous corporations. Yesterday we saw the launch of Ethereum, where you can now actually buy Ether. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But when I was looking into how we were going to organize the World Crypto Network, I felt, look, philosophically I'm aligned with a lot of the values that I see coming out of the Bitcoin movement of decentralizing as much as can be decentralized. Why don't I put my money where my mouth is? Why don't I create this indie media rolling news channel we're trying to give birth to at the moment? But rather than it taking over me, and rather than me, working my arse off to make this thing work with people coming and going and, maybe not fulfilling expectations and things like that, why not, have the separation of duties and have a multi-signature wallet between all the hosts? Hell, why not even give audience members like you guys a copy of one of the private keys so that you can actually have a say iteratively over on a project by project basis? Because if you go hang out any one of these incubator, accelerator, hubs for all these new companies, you get a real insight to what a company actually is. You've got a small group of people sat around a table with their frappuccino lattes, they're very middle class, mum and dad's got the rent, they're all doing okay. Then they say, right, how can we pump this? Right, now that we've bought this and we've invested all this stuff, we need to pump it, or we need to get a social media guru. And they start having meetings with SEO experts. This is all about getting that finite attention span of your non-customer, of your potential client. And I just feel like not only are these companies with mainstream advertising manipulating the actions of consumers, because remember, as I've said before, advertising is really just the assumption that you can't be trusted with your purchasing decisions. This is a supply-side dominant economy where I've got all the control as the seller, but the buyer thinks they have control. They've got the illusion of control, but of course they're not in control of their discretionary attention because they're being given all this messaging. In the old days, an advertisement on a TV channel used to mean quite a lot because it was very expensive to buy that airtime, and it sent a signal to you as the non-customer that this company must be good, they must be established, this product can't be bad, otherwise they wouldn't be able to recover the cost of the advert. But nowadays anyone can advertise on the internet, and so a lot of these signals are very, very noisy. You get all this bombardment. It's like, well, why should I buy this thing? If you're going to come to me with this, recommendation, tell me why I should trust you first. Because if all you're going to give me is, someone in India who can put together a Photoshop document and make it look kind of sexy on the outside, I'm going to need more than that. I want authenticity. I want you to understand my needs first. You see, there isn't this kind of bilateral communication going on. Now you still have usability and UX in the field of coding, but broadly speaking, it's far too easy for corporations to control the public discourse. And whether that's a corporation in the form of a government with its flag being the logo, whether that's Starbucks and their logo, whether it's a religion, I don't care. You are denying your individuality. You're taking cover and you're hiding behind a corporate personhood, which is really just a fiction and a theatre production. And I just think we need to be more mindful, and we need to be spending more time looking into projects like open transactions, Ethereum, BitShares, where from the get-go you can actually take a moral position and say, I want to organize this group of human beings this way. I don't want a hard line distinction between my customer and my employees. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you are watching this show and you like what we're saying and you think that we are rocking this and you want to be a part of it, you absolutely can. And we shouldn't be able to stop you from doing that. You should be able to set up your own show, and the World Crypto Network exists to help you get to where your goals are, right? It's not for us to start saying, well, I don't agree with that message because technically our message, I'm on message this week, and my message this week is to be anti-Russia, so I'm going to dig up an old story of how a Russian spy was killed. Did you see this Litvinenko thing? It's insane. It's not a coincidence. And as a result, people just start to feel a little bit played, but we should be looking into a lot of these avenues a bit more. Sorry, I've said too much, as always.
Well, let's go back. Let's bring it back on how this is going to be a basis for the mission for what you plan on to accomplish with World Crypto Network. You want to keep it in the hands of everybody else as well. So at any time, if they feel that the representative from WCN isn't moving along the cause or whatever, they can take back from them and reallocate. I think that's an important feature that you have. You want to cake into this project that you're undertaking.
Well, the thing is, though, what I'm trying to do at the moment, let me show everyone our new subreddit. So, as you may know, I've been talking a little bit about, over the last few weeks, about setting up this kind of decentralize the world project. It's gone through a few different names that Nick and I are working on, where essentially a few of us evangelists go out to regions of the world that have poor internet connectivity, that are in need of the power of open source software, the financial disruption, and we airdrop on them open source hardware and software that empowers them at an individual level to get their needs met. And in order to do this, we'd have to fundraise it. I want it to be sustainable, not just sustainable. It should be a not just for profit endeavor, meaning that if we make a profit, it's because we did something right, and not because we played the market and we got in at the right time and we got out at the right time. But we actually consider all of the externalities to our activities. Maybe you want to criticize us and you want to say, look, Chris, don't you want to be a bit careful here? Like, how do you know that you can trust another human being with this much control? We don't know a lot of these regions in the world. And that's a perfectly valid thing. And I want you to come here to the World Crypto Network and have your say. So that, I set this up last night. I'm actually not a power user of Reddit at all. I kind of, come here now and again. So I'm still very new to it. And I kind of stayed up late last night, it made me think, as I was kind of preparing the World Crypto Network brand, right? It forced me to start thinking critically about what do I want this network to become? Because when Mad Bitcoin's Thomas Hunt first presented the idea to me, he's like, well, it's kind of like a collective of like-minded people, self-selected group of individuals who share certain values, and we just want to help each other piggyback off of our reputations, right? So if the World Crypto Network picks up more subscribers because of what I do, then Megan Lords, she can also piggyback off of my reputation and my subscribers, and then other people will find one another's shows, and it will be quite nice. But I want to make sure that we think very critically, because there's an opportunity right now for us to take the initiative in this industry where we do ask ourselves hard questions about what we're attempting to do. We've thought about raising money, crowdfunding. We've thought about, doing more Twitter, social media initiatives like we've done before. But what I really like about Reddit is the upvoting. It's got this kind of, this sort of algorithmic approach to news, which I really quite like. And then people can have a go at us if they don't like the way we're doing it. They absolutely should, like the audience members themselves, absolutely should have the ability to even seize the funds of the network, right? So we talked about having a Bitcoin wallet divided up over 7 private keys that are distributed around like either an elected or an elite group of administrators of the World Crypto Network. But then what you would do is you would take one of those keys or 2 of those keys and you'd chop them up into little smaller pieces, and you divide it up over the audience members. Not necessarily indiscriminately. We would have to see our most loyal people based on how much they'd commented, make sure that they are chronometric. Chronometric is a form of algorithmic matching, pattern matching, where you work out someone's human by measuring their activity over time. There are certain things a bot wouldn't be able to do, wouldn't be able to build relationships, like things, downvote things. So we would build up a kind of pseudo reputation system that would then give our audience members a share in the company, so that not only could you fork the World Crypto Network, you could take the money as well. Right? If we were really screwing it up and you felt like we were taking this away from our origins, and you read the wiki and the manifesto, and this is what we hold dear, and this is what we will fight to uphold, and all of this stuff, and people come along and say, oh guys, you just sold out, oh you got that money off that guy, and now all you talk about is his company, you should absolutely have the ability to seize those funds. And that should be baked into the blockchain, not some centralized SQL database on a website, right? You absolutely should have that baked in to the Bitcoin client, so that no one has the ability to thwart this process.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Hello. Yes, we can. You're a bit quiet. Turn your...
what's up? Hi. Okay. Hi. You hear me better now?
Yeah. Did you hear all my rant? Have you say what you want to say?
Yeah, a bit of it, not the whole thing. Yeah. Oh, I was just saying that I think that all of it sounds really good, and I think that we just have to kind of jump in the swimming pool, because there's no real other way to do it. You know what I mean? You just have to do one of these airdrops somewhere near you, or I don't know, and take a bunch of pictures and document it, and then show people what it is, because it's kind of hard to maybe for some people to kind of realize what that's all about, and just we have to show people you know what the possibilities are. And I think that it's also okay to just charge for it. Just say, okay, it costs this much, and if you want to apply for us to come to you, then you know, you have to apply. If you want to come to, you could apply for the whole group to come and do this airdrop, and then the group could look at the application and then do a crowdfunding in order to go to that place. You know what I mean? But I mean, you could just sometimes people do better when you just say, hey, it costs €10, and that's how much it costs. They're like, okay, great, I'll pay €10. They just, you know what I mean? Some people just need a kind of a benchmark. It's not about trying to trick them into paying too much or anything. It's just, you know, you can just come out and say, okay, it costs this much, and we would cut, and this is what we would do, and you would get, you know, this open source little box, or you'd get a Raspberry Pi or whatever. And I think it would be good to just, like I said, just jump in and do it once at least, and then you know, learn from it and let people give feedback about how they thought it ran and what they think could have been done better, or to just see what people need. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it needs to be more iterative, right? So my point is that the people should be funding us on a project by project basis. Yes, there can be a master wallet for the or master address, donation address for the World Crypto Network in general, but that should only be paying for the subsistence of the organization. It should pay for petty cash and out-of-pocket expenses and just the basic.
Well, I think what. Sorry, don't.
Go ahead.
I think what Theo was trying to say is like. After we have like a framework on how we want to execute these for, like, let's say we do one or two and we figure out how we're going to go to a small town and execute this, what Theo's saying is we could just have it all priced out and have somebody basically say, look, if you want us to come do this for you, you contact us, you pay this amount, and we can come do it for this amount of money. It doesn't necessarily mean we're trying to take a profit off of it, but this is how much it costs for us to execute. We said, you know, we'll still have the ones that people can donate to or whatever, but there's going to be places that maybe they just want to contact us and have us come do it. You know what I mean? They don't want to wait for a whole build-up. So I think that's a good option to keep for revenue.
Or expats. I'm also thinking expatriates, people who are no longer living in a place, but they'd really like to get some financial support. And actually, really, it's about the people and the places, because, like I say, all the conflict that goes on in the world is really just down to the fact that people don't want to forget. The people there do not want to forget the actions that were committed by identities, by individuals at this geographic location, despite the fact that the world is hurtling through space right now at 189,000 miles an hour, whatever that speed is. You're never in the same place twice, but there's a certain recognition, a locality. We are, you know, everything that is around me is intensely practical to me. I am here and I'm nowhere else, but I don't see why I can't be free wherever I am in the world. I don't see why, you know, let's go to this question or this point being made by Jamie, who's often appeared on Chris Before Coffee says the difference is that a government gets a special set of rights that don't apply to companies or individuals. They can kill and steal with impunity, and it's viewed as legitimate. Individuals and corporations cannot. And yeah, again, like, point well made. Like, yeah, they get way more privileged rights. I mean, corporations kill people too, of course. I'm thinking big tobacco and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's
in fairness, right now we live in a fascist. We live in a fascist world where, depending on how high up your corporate structure is, anyways, you're part of the government, you know, de facto as is.
Yeah. And I think Jamie's saying that actually people think this is normalized. People just think this is okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with Jamie, and I think that's a really good point. What I was thinking is that why don't we just do some smaller activity with all these divided up wallet, you know, with this like 7 keys, or one of the 7 keys is then divided again, and let's play with it. Let's do something that we can execute fairly easily, just to show how it works. You know what I mean? That like a kind of like a test case, but it's something really practical. I'm not sure what it could be, if it's the subject for video, or if Thomas should go video this place, or I don't know what. You know what I mean?
What if it's as simple as funding advertising for WCN on Google or some shit, paying for AdSense or whatever those Bitcoin AdWords are?
Yeah, okay. There is. I don't think we should do AdSense, but there is ads, and I mean,
that was an example. I just meant something.
Sure. You could pay to to help promote it. Yeah, okay. That could be something. But I mean, there could be a lot of different opinions, and we could just show one test case where people were able to vote or block, or to show their opinion, and you could see transparently on the blockchain. Okay, here's this. These are the addresses, and that we really do it as a practical example to really run through it, and also maybe we need to learn from it to see. I mean, theoretically, I think all of us really have a good understanding of how it works, but I've never done it with 7 keys, distributed keys like that. You know what I mean? I've never done it with 7 keys, and then one of them is like cut up into pieces, like you said. I mean, I totally think that's a great way to do it. I just never practically did it. I think let's practically figure out something that we can do, and use that methodology, and then go from there.
Well, Nick and I talked yesterday about getting CoinMap. So it's all done open source. CoinMap is actually on GitHub, and they use OpenStreetMap, and I want to keep all of this open source if I can. Like, I don't even want Google Analytics on our website. I want to use that as an open source version that keeps all the information on your server privately. Like, everything we do, like every action we take is a moral action, is a moral act. Like, we don't just speak with our words, we speak with our actions, and we do the things we believe in, we say we believe in, and that's as much part of this communication as possible. So Nick and I talked about getting the CoinMap up. We need a web designer, we need a front-end designer. I can ask my friends at Feathercoin and see if anyone wants to do it there. Absolutely everyone should be forthcoming with their donation addresses. If you want to take money in Feathercoin, I have a Feathercoin address, Dogecoin, Reddit, Redcoin, whatever currency you want, because it's about currency choice. You should be forthcoming with that. If you are doing this as a gift, make it clear that this is like, no, I'm volunteering my time for this. But if deep down you know that you can't really afford that, you should also be forthcoming and say, look, I will do this for free, but you know what, I'd really appreciate it if someone could help me out here, right? Because this is my only form of income or whatever. And just be upfront with your expectations and what you want in return for this. But I really would like to get a good website done where we have the map of the world and we have all of the different businesses on there. Maybe get like an active group of people to go through the businesses that are already listed on CoinMap and maybe take off some of the noisy spam, and actually say, look, I really want to get this Welsh-speaking village in Argentina. There are Welsh-speaking regions of Argentina, by the way, because of the expatriate community. And I want them to get Bitcoin, and maybe they can. Maybe maybe you live in Wales, and maybe you want to actually set up some remitting service between the two of you. The regulators and the governments can't come after you as individuals. Even in New York, the New York regulations recently don't cover individuals. So there's nothing stopping you from undertaking a lot of these activities that the banks used to do on an individual level, as long as it's not your mainstream of income, right? So if we distribute this out, and then, you know, I'm all up for people volunteering, for people getting involved. Like, let's go out there. Nick, you were talking about CJDNS and some other of these open source networking, so that people, like, we're thinking of prioritizing the regions of the world, and we're thinking towns and villages, not big metropolises with lots of, you know, franchised businesses and McDonald's and stuff. We're looking at regions of the world that stand the best chance of help that we can give them. They show the most potential for growth. Maybe they've got like a 56K equivalent internet connectivity. Maybe we use that as our baseline. Don't go to regions of the world that don't have internet. That kind of doesn't make sense. But regions of the world where the cost of internet connectivity has just hit that sweet spot where we can give them the 24 gigabyte version of the blockchain, and then from now on it's only an hour and a half every day to update it. That's another copy of the Bitcoin blockchain distributed to another region of the world that wouldn't otherwise have it. That's more redundancy, that's more protection.
Yeah, it sounds good. What about Wales? What does the Wales Parliament say about Bitcoin? Do they have any opinion? I mean, you could just go to Wales. I mean, they have like a lot of farms and permaculture and stuff like that. It's kind of popular. You could just head out, go to Wales. I don't know right now how the economy is in Wales now, but I've been there and it's really nice. And I know it's got, you know, nice, and it could just be a good, you could just start out with Britain, just do the island. Just go to Wales, go some places in England, and then go to Scotland, and then you say, okay, we finished that island. Now next stop, it could just start in Europe. Well, I mean, I'm in Germany, you're in Britain. It could just be right here. We don't have to go halfway across the world to start it, you know. And then, like I said, these would be the first ones to just, you know, get it going and to see what the reaction is and how it goes, and to listen to what people need and to go on with that. I mean, I think
it should be geography agnostic, right? It should be drawing around cultural lines rather than. Like, yes, we should definitely be. No, I'll tell you what. It should be. You're right. No, it should be local centric. Like, we should definitely be looking at the regions that we are closest to already and make the most of those opportunities. But I feel like the overall spirit of the project needs to be rather disinterested in the Cartesian space of like miles and meters and so on, and all the kind of the arbitrary lines, but should be more looking at the cultural borders, and actually these are the customs of this community over here, and we can't quite pinpoint the exact line in the ground, but this is how people behave here, and actually celebrate the diversity of human nature rather than do this kind of Gaussian like averaging that globalization does, where everywhere starts to look the same, and we've all got Starbucks and McDonald's on our high street, and you know, that kind of morphing into knowledge.
I think that's a good thing that we're all kind of in different spots around the world then, because if we all do a little bit of something and go experiment in different local places, we can build a better framework on what to do when we go somewhere else that we're not familiar with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at this Ethereum project now. So this has got quite a lot of attention over the last 24 hours because it's much, much anticipated. We can talk a little bit more about the distributed autonomous organizations, which is what I've heard the developers call it, at Ethereum. So they've got an interesting bootstrapping model, I have to say. It's 1 Bitcoin buys 2,000 Ether. However, the number of Ether that are produced is determined by how many Ether are purchased. So there's no hard cap here. So yes, ostensibly it looks like it's 30 cents an Ether, but actually it will be the community of buyers that will determine how many Ether are produced, and therefore will determine the market capitalization, which I thought was a very, very interesting model. And instantly it got some kickback on the Bitcoin thread, as we've seen this kind of protectionism has been around before, where, you know, one of the moderators gave us some forward guidance where he said, I will continue to remove non-Bitcoin related news from this subreddit. And he's got 54 points on his upvoting, and then Britvia comes in with 90 points and says, I for one believe Ethereum's IPO to be pretty relevant to the news of the Bitcoin community. Many of us have been waiting for further developments in Bitcoin 2.0, smart contracts, smart property, at most of the major Bitcoin conferences. So instead of removing this post that you deem irrelevant, why not let users upvote and downvote first? And actually this was echoed, down the thread. Charles Hoskinson, I think, chimed in. I think this is Charles Hoskinson. I apologize if it's not, but Ethereum Charles. I find it incredibly ironic that on the one hand, Ethereum gets hammered as a massive security risk to all who dare touch it, but then suddenly, on the other hand, the Bitcoin core developers, this is in response to Jeff Garzik's comment, says all the innovation can be quickly forked into the protocol. So this is one of the criticisms that we've seen, guys, of Ethereum, is that we can just put it into a sidechain, and this is what Jeff Garzik, the Bitcoin developer, has been claiming, that we can just put all of this innovation into Bitcoin. Well, first of all, wouldn't it be better to see if Ethereum can make it work first? Even though I'm critical of the way it's being handled, I still think you've got a lot of the in-group, out-group biases that we see with other of these altcoins, where I do think a lot of people are just looking at this as a money-making endeavor.
Yeah.
And not to mention the centralization of the hashing power, where you're basically putting so much at stake by having all these contracts running. It's going to be the network to attack, but they deserve the opportunity to try this out. And I don't think it's a case of the Bitcoin developers. Well, first of all, the Bitcoin community members kicking out yet another story about an altcoin. I don't see why this isn't any different to a company announcing that it's going to be accepting Bitcoin and announcing it on the Bitcoin subreddit.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's pretty much the same. And this Bitcoin 2.0 thing, I think, needs to be dropped. I think these just need to be referred to as like coin 2.0s or next gen coins or something, because it's getting a little confusing when we're not even at Bitcoin 1.0. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys know how much Ether I need in order to do a smart contract? Because I don't have any benchmark for relevance. What does it mean if I own 2,000 Ether besides that I can resell them? I'm supposed to be able to do a contract with it, but how much Ether do I need in order to do my contract? Then I could see, okay, it costs this much Bitcoin, or I could see how relevant this all is. But if I only need one Satoshi of a Ether to do a contract, then I don't need so much Ether. Do you guys have any idea?
No, I don't, and also we won't know, because the thing is that we won't know how many Ether we're going to need. Let me show you the actual public address.
I was going to ask, do they have a public testnet for anything?
Oh yeah, sure. They have been running it.
We tested already?
The problem, okay, so far they've raised £1.5 million. I don't know how much that is in dollars, sorry, but they've raised about 4,500 Bitcoin. I think this is the only address that they're using, and these things are coming in thick and fast. So we won't. The answer is we won't know until this public sale, this pre-sale, has ended. Now, one thing that came up when I was speaking to one of the Ethereum guys on Skype earlier on is he said, well, look, actually, you know what? We can't stop Cryptsy from trading Ether, right? Now that the Ether are out there, and once people start getting emailed their Ethereum wallets, which I understand is the way they're doing it, we can't stop a public exchange from exchanging the Ether. And as a result, it's unknown as to what the market price is going to be, because you've left it up to the market to decide on the capitalization and the volume of Ether. So the truth is we won't know until Cryptsy or some other exchange starts trading it publicly, and more people can start putting in buy and sell orders, and people start pricing in their sentiment appropriately.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think that's a major thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, yeah, if I don't know, I really think that, okay, I mean, on the one aspect, there's just the simple trading aspect, and that, of course, but that's just speculation. But I mean, I would like to know, how much Ether I need to do a contract, and if it's a complicated contract, do I need more Ether, or do I have to keep pumping it with Ether in order to make the contract last longer for so many block confirmations, perhaps, or whatever.
My basic understanding is that the computation that you're performing when you're doing the hashing is you're actually making that contract Turing complete. So you are finishing the final part of the code in order to make it execute. As a result, I think part of the problem here is that we've got a misalignment in the cadence and the rhythm of communication and engineering. We're talking way too much and we're not doing enough. We're not engineering enough. The engineers can't keep up with these tweeters and these social media people and people, frankly, like us, you know, here with we can make these videos instantly, but it takes an engineer, particularly like, you know, Gavin, you know, the lead developer of Ethereum. It must be a nightmare in his job, because he's got all this pressure on him, all this anticipation being built up. Until you can actually use this for something, I think, frankly, they should have kept it off the market until later this year, because they're saying it's not going to be ready until Q4, Q1 of next year. It'll be winter 2014-15 until it's actually up and running. So what are all these speculators? Speculators, because that's what they are. Like, what are you doing buying it until it's actually got some value in it? What are they going to do in the meantime?
I don't know. I'm going to wait until it crashes and then buy some, I think.
And you know what? And that's what I think a lot of people are doing. Me too.
Yeah.
I was going to throw half a Bitcoin at it just because I was reading what some people are hoping or like looking forward to valuation, but I can't find anything to show me how it actually functions right now. There's no like demo videos of them executing a contract on their network and showing how it's actually working.
Yeah.
And if they're over 6 months away, I'll just stand back. I have too many 2 weeks in this ecosystem already.
6 months is like 600 years in Bitcoin.
Yeah. In crypto, that's forever. That's an eternity, you know. And I totally agree. That's why I'm really wondering. You know, it doesn't. I mean, they do have a lot of videos, and this whole. Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
I haven't seen a video of them actually using the network, right? Like, is there any videos of them showing using the network and completing a contract?
No, not exactly. There are some videos where they go through and kind of show you the code, and they show how you could code a contract, but I don't believe it's executed. It's just they show you kind of like a preview of what the code is going to be like, because they're kind of showing you that whole Esperanto, what they've kind of created, this code Esperanto, and that's interesting. But it's true. It's like you said. It's in the praxis it's not there. You know, you can't see any practical example yet. And I'm on the website and I can't find the list of developers, but I will try to find it. But anyway. Yeah, and it all sounds really interesting, but like everyone's saying, it's just a question of is it going to work? When is it going to work? And a lot of other things. Okay, here we have roadmap. I'm going to click that and see if I can figure out the answer to any of my questions. The roadmap is like a video or a flash, so I'm not going to go do that. But anyway, it's got a lot of attention, and I don't know. I mean... let's see, what do we, okay, we've got Counterparty and Mastercoin right now, and they use Bitcoin. And I think both of them are being used a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if you could really, I don't think either one is doing really smart contracts, though. I don't know if I would really call them smart contracts. Do you know if any of Mastercoin, if there's like a smart contract going on right now?
They have talked about doing smart contracts, yes.
Yeah, they talked about it, but I mean, I want to see
one. No, it's not working. No, none of this stuff works. So that's important to point out, because the number of developers, the ratio between developers and communications people is like millions to one. Like, I'm not kidding. We have got way too many PR people, and actually you need intermediaries. You need, I like the term that Google used, like a sales marketing engineer or an engineer marketer, someone who understands the technical stuff well enough that they can act as a go-between. Like, someone needs to go through these GitHub repositories and they need to start marking up a lot of these conversations and making them available in plain English to regular folk. I've actually suggested that we on this show actually read out the Bitcoin developer newsletter, which is publicly available. I believe if you just type that into your favorite search engine, it'll come up, and the archives are all presented on the website. Like, we should probably spend a good chunk of our time going through those newsletters and discussing some of those decisions that are being made, because it's not as if the code isn't well commented. I love the way people are presenting this new technology like it's carpentry 500 years ago, as if it's optional as to whether or not you need to educate yourself about it. No, it's not optional. This is something that if you don't understand this in 5 to 6 years' time, you are going to find it very, very difficult to keep up in the world economy, because this is a new language. It's like learning how to read and write, learning how to code, I mean, I don't think people are taking this seriously enough. I think there's a lot of hand waving. I think there's a lot of chuckling at like, oh, look at what we're doing now, as if it's all very funny, and look at all the different behaviors we're picking up year after year. We're picking up new habits. We're doing things that we didn't do in 2005, 2006, as recently as that. And we're not thinking critically about the technorati elite. And maybe they're benevolent. I don't care whether they're benevolent. I care about the principle that we're being led by a small group of people into a future that we barely understand.
Sure. Yeah, we could look at the newsletter if you guys want, and I think we should just look at it beforehand a little bit. But I'm sure it's not that hard to understand, you know, the changes and to discuss them and to put them in.
It's not as if they're talking a foreign language. I mean,
yeah.
A couple of Google searches later, and you pretty much worked it out.
Sure. Yeah. So. Like you said, none of these smart contracts are active, and now Ripple is jumping on the train, and they say, yeah, we're also doing smart contracts too, so we're also still in the game. They've also said, yeah, we're doing smart contracts, and I saw a comment earlier, but I didn't really have enough time to really look into it because it's this Ethereum stuff. But they were like, yeah, Ripple could be an oracle between Ethereum and Ripple or something. I don't know what this oracle term is, but I think what they're saying is that a smart contract in Ripple could communicate with a smart contract in Ethereum. But this just goes back to what you're saying. All of this stuff is so far out ahead of what is available now in practice and what people can actually do right now. This is just, Ripple is just like, oh yeah, we want to be in the smart contract game too now, and they're like, yeah, we've got to ramp this up, and we're doing smart contracts now also.
Trying to get more funding. I think that's a dying project that needs an influx of money.
Well,
and I think their investor VC capital is drying the fuck up.
Yeah, well,
who's investor VC? Which one?
Just in Ripple in general, Ripple Labs. I think their VC money is drying up, and they're trying to do anything to spark new capital investment.
I don't know if you guys realize it, but I think he's been on Ripple Labs for about 1 or 2 months. But there's this guy called Karl Theodor Gutenberg, and he's the former German defense minister, and now he's on Ripple Labs. And he was forced to resign for plagiarism on his doctorate, basically. So and I thought it's the weirdest addition to Ripple Labs is to have the former German defense minister. But apparently he's supposed to be someone consulting them about how to deal with regulations and governments and all that stuff. But it was such really bizarre. I mean, in Germany, I saw the post on Facebook that someone posted, and I thought it was a joke. I really didn't accept it as being true. And then a few weeks ago, I went over to Ripple Labs, and he's there. He has like an interview in English and everything, and just kind of like went under the radar from everyone. But yeah, they hired him as some kind of like weird, consultant. I mean, I don't know. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, that a former defense minister is now on Ripple Labs.
You notice they always appear at every regulatory meeting and everything. There's a Ripple shill everywhere, all over the place. Ripple shills. It's crazy. It's like they come out of the woodwork whenever it's like government and cryptocurrency. Boom, Ripple shill appears.
Yeah. Well, I think that they just, they see their product or their whatever you want to call it as having a big advantage if things are regulated, I guess. But anyway, I haven't bought any. I've never bought any Ripple, and I haven't even tried to use their network or whatever they call it. I mean, I do know that it's kind of like decentralized.
I did way back.
It's decentralized exchanges and stuff. So, but anyway, now they're also hopping on the. I think I have there was this like on some shows. I forgot what show. There's this prediction time at the end of the show. So I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction that a smart contract is going to be the new keyword for new altcoins. So what you're going to have is new altcoins that are going to be released, and it's going to be first ever. You have to put first ever in front of everything, but first ever anonymous, ASIC resistant, multi-pool resistant X15 smart contracts, anonymous, decentral exchange, SMS transactions, and everything else thrown on top of it, you know, like a pizza with everything. But you're going to have to, all the new altcoins are going to have to put in...
At least that, right? At least
exactly.
that much.
Yeah, so they're going to have to start including the keyword smart contracts or implementing smart contracts in the future or something like that. It's going to be like a new kind of, you know, key phrase to get people... oh, yeah, I forgot. Proof of stake with limited amount of proof of work and so on and so on.
Right. So what we're saying is it's about controlling language and
Exactly.
identity and branding, and it's all about barriers and borders. Look at the theme that's emerging from this discussion just on its own. It's this idea of being able to identify the foreground from the background. You wouldn't even be able to read writing on paper if there wasn't some contrast or border between the ink and the material of the paper behind it. That we are obsessed as a species of finding barriers, finding borders, and then, you know, trying to either turn those into variables or persuading other people that these borders are significant. Look at the way we frame the debate on topics like racism and sexism, where it's about defining the debate ahead of time within your own reference frame and saying, let's talk about it like this way, when actually there are a plethora of other ways we could also be framing this debate, but we choose to frame it around gender. Now look at the way the developers deal with their constraints, right? So this is actually a post. I was looking up the nLock feature, because one of the things I wanted to do with the World Crypto Network wallet is I wanted to put time-limited functions on the spendability of the money, so that when someone sends you a donation, they might want to be able to say, look, I don't want this money to be spent for a few months. Maybe they don't like the way Chris is running it or whatever. I don't know, but there are some interesting dynamics there. In order to do that at the moment, first of all, Gavin Andreessen posted somewhere else on the Bitcoin Talk forum that this is not possible in the Bitcoin reference client. That's the QT wallet. But you can do it, but the way you do it, okay, is by making a transaction, let's say in Armory, getting the hex code for it, okay, putting it into a raw decode. You can actually use blockchain.info, have like a raw decode function, and then looking at the last 4 bytes of the hex. I mean, look at how easy this is. So easy. And then actually going in, manually editing it, and then converting it back into hex again, and then retransmitting it onto the Bitcoin network. Like, that's how you do an nLock function. And yet it's such a powerful feature, because, you know, particularly like the guy, I think, asking in this thread here, or one of the other threads, he was saying, look, I've got a gambling problem, and I want to be able to stop myself from gambling my Bitcoins away. Is there any way I can put my coins into a wallet and actually prevent myself from spending them again in the future?
I think that's great. I mean, I've been playing around with trying to use hex to put audio on the blockchain, but I haven't been really successful. But I think that's that has a big potential, and like you showed, it's not impossible to do. It's not that hard to just change that little bit of code right there.
Right. So yeah, the hex is the go-between between the human writing in a readable format, like in the format that you just saw, where you have variables and you're able to define lock_time and then inputs and the hash and so on. But then the actual computer needs to understand it, and the hex is a common way that applications use it. I remember having like an old Atari ST when I was a kid, and you could actually cheat in the games by getting a hash dump of your saved game, and then you could go into the hash and you could start editing like how much ammunition you'd have or how many lives you would have. So yeah, you're basically, what they're saying that you can do with this is that, yeah, you can change the parameters of your Bitcoin transaction and communicate with the nodes on the network, but there's no front end for it. There's no button for it yet. And I think partly it's because we've got a deficiency of competent developers, and partly I think it's because not enough people understand just how important this is and the potential these features could have on people's lives.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really I'm looking at the thread right now. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but yeah. It doesn't look that hard to do, though, even for someone that's not a coder. You just, read.
No, and you know the problem here is that if you were a developer, if you're a developer right now and you want to be able to make this available to people, the first thing you go and do is you get the logo, the branding, you go get the website, and then you hire like a marketing guy, and he's going because you don't want to invest this time in this project unless you know you're going to get a return for it, right? If I'm about to code up this wallet and all the liabilities that come with it, like what if people lose their money, what if they don't read the small print, the first thing that people do when they try to make these solutions is they try to find a way of locking in the value. They're thinking like, what do I get out of this? Rather than just like doing something without any regard to whether or not they get paid or any kind of return, the first thing they start looking for is like, who's going to pay me for this?
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
Well, couldn't we raise money to do, or raise coins or
right,
whatever?
Okay, yeah, but then you're back to the old model of drawing down on the future to pay for today by making a claim about future activities over which really, if we're honest, we don't have a whole lot of control over. That's why I like this idea of separating the concerns between me as an individual and then the brands that I work for. Like, I think these ideas have way too much power over us. I think we've granted the corporate personhood, whatever form it takes, and yes, there are some worse than others, but we hide behind these brands and these identities to the point where we end up working for them and not the other way around. So if I have a public key that I publicize to the world on all of my different social media presences across the web, and if I'm honest and I account for my daily activities, like maybe I was talking about this with Unit yesterday, where I have something like Timekeeper running in the background that monitors my activities. I could actually encrypt that, upload that to GitHub. I could even build a Merkle tree out of all of the things that I do, publish the Merkle root every 24 hours in the blockchain, so that if anyone wants to audit my activities later on, I can prove that I really did do those things at that time. And then for people to say, look at how much work Chris is doing, and he hasn't, this is how much he's being paid. We want to see more of this kind of activity, and you should be able to fund that because like we say, we've all got to pay the rent. I just don't think anyone's thinking outside of the box on this. I think we're still too stuck in our tribes, and we're not thinking for new solutions.
I think they'll come. I think it's just going to come with time. Right now, people are trying to figure out how to monetize their efforts, and I think launching the coin is a good idea for like Ethereum and Mastercoin, etc. I just don't know if it's a very good idea. Like it's a good idea to try to finance their project. Like, well, how else are you? I guess they could have a project done and then just sell it or sell access to it, but I don't know. Like I said, I told you yesterday, Chris, I like the way Open Transactions is doing it. There's no coin associated. Basically, what will happen is people will run a server that just signs, the contracts or the receipts for whatever's running. They're third party. Basically, that's all it is. It's just the servers are just something that signs off on the transaction. It passes around receipts, but there's no coin. And basically, these servers will be able to set their own financial or monetary forms of revenue. They could be like, oh, I charge 0.1 Bitcoin to process any transactions. You need receipts from my machine, and then it creates a competition inside that ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to see what he brings out over the next probably year or two. I don't think his is going to be long. I don't think Open Transactions is launching this year. I think that's like a next year thing.
So you bring up a good point. We should have more projects that aren't coins. We should have more projects within crypto ecosystem where the people participating are participating because this is what they believe, and there's no kind of like hidden agenda. Maybe we're trying to get the price to go up, all of that stuff. We're just working to explore what this new technology can do.
Yeah, I think coins still have their place. I just think right now we're at a saturation point where we need to get away from it. We need to find other venues of, I'm losing my words on this, but we need to find this ecosystem without just the coin, because we have value in these coins already. We don't always need a new coin, but yeah.
Yeah, I think at the moment the reflex has been if I come up with an idea, the first thing I do is I register the @coin domain, and then I, set up a new blockchain. And I think even though I've said in the past that I think everyone, eventually everyone should have their blockchain. I'm going to be now critical of myself. I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to say I think maybe we're rushing in too quickly to create blockchains, and we're not thinking critically enough about why. I think you need to have a thesis first. You need to say, right, this is what I believe in, and anyone else who shares in that belief or shares in the spirit of the belief should consider joining me and partaking in that discussion. And if it doesn't work for you, well, that's okay. You can go join something else or fork it, take your own project. But if we can start to divide up the accountability mechanisms so that these ideas, sure enough, can outlive their founders, just like a corporation can, but also give the customer an actual stake in what's going on. Because let me answer this question that came up on Twitter by Beauty On. He and I have had some exchanges before, and I think it's fair to say that he comes across as a Rothbardian. I actually find him, if you're watching this, so you actually do make me think a lot, even though I sometimes am quite critical of things that you've said. Your tweets to me in the past have made me go off and spend a lot of time looking into the background of what you're saying. So he was responding to my comment on corporate personhood earlier on, and he says, how does corporate personhood control anyone? You have the choice to contract with or buy from them or not. And what I was saying earlier, and I hope I made it clear, was that, yeah, ostensibly it does look like you have some control, but first of all, let's look at the way I reach decisions. Google demonstrated in the early 2000s that the way to identify someone approaching a decision is to give them answers to questions, that your questions in themselves reveal an intention. And if you control the information in that person's life, then you control their actions and their beliefs. You control what it is they see by chance. Because a lot of the information that I learn every day isn't coincidental. It's not by chance. It's deliberate. It's there because someone could afford to put it there. And I think what the internet is starting to demonstrate is people are starting to align themselves into these tribes that are based on authenticity. So that now I'm actually very critical of any kind of salesman or marketer. I want to know why you're even telling me in the first place. Maybe your product's great and maybe it's fantastic. And maybe you do all this big advertising and you deserve all the attention you get, or maybe not. And maybe the only reason you want to sell this to me is because you bought it for less and you don't anticipate being able to sell it at this price for very much longer, and so you want to sell it to me now. Like, I'm looking for win-win situations where when I buy something off of you, it's like, oh, maybe I didn't anticipate wanting it, but now that I have found it, it actually does enrich my life in some way. At the moment, I feel like a lot of the information that we get is not impartial. And I'm not saying, oh, by the way, I'm not critical of capitalism at all, by the way, if anyone's worrying about that. I just think that these companies need to change. They need to become more granular. They need to represent the individuals. It's not just the customer that gets controlled by the marketing messages. It's also the people inside of them who have to pay their rent, as we've been discussing. A lot of the people that you see in Google Campus, they go in there and you're basically being paid to sell shit to your friends on social media. People are going in and saying, I've got 2,000 followers on Twitter. What can you pay me for that? I'll talk about your product on my Facebook page. How much is that worth to you? And they're trying to present the sacrifice to the boss, the guy with a problem, the guy who needs something solved. Maybe he's got some VCs breathing down his neck because he's in year 2 and he still hasn't made his ROI or done what he said he was going to do on his fictional business plan with the hockey stick graph that showed the profits going through the roof, right? And then you've got all these kind of complicated incentives, many of which people don't discuss openly and transparently, that people just sit there behind their laptops all day just pumping messages. And it's not as if we can't tell the difference. When a friend starts shilling and starts like pumping some information at me on Twitter, I know I'm being sold at. You know, that's what I think we're paying. The hidden cost of this is our trust and our relationships between each other, is that I don't know who I can trust anymore because fake is going to fake.
Yeah, plus how often have we heard, oh, they're just doing their job. They're just doing their job. That's all they're doing. They're not trying to hurt you. They're just doing their job.
Right. And this is so this is the so I love the way Russia Today markets themselves, where they tell a good line, they tell a great tagline, where it's all about getting away from mainstream corporate media, and you get shows like this. And I've been watching Abby Martin for a while now. Like, I don't know quite what doing your makeup in a mirror has to do with reporting the news. Sure, whatever. Like,
Dude, she,
this is. That journalist at Russia Today that resigned recently actually said that all they're doing is finding sexier ways to lie. But the marketing message, you know, does it all for you. It basically says, like, yeah, absolutely, you're getting duped by the mainstream. But all we're doing here with institutions like Russia Today is we're just replacing one monster with another. I mean, this is no better. I don't see what value add I'm getting from watching her put on her makeup, put on some high heel shoes. I mean, I don't say she doesn't have the right to do that. I just wonder what value it adds to reporting the information on the ground, which is what I want to get.
She's already got. She already got a lot of shit for that whole introduction. I don't even know. I don't remember. I've seen it many times.
Why is it relevant? Why is your
marketing? And it's to get you some sort of relationship with her before you hear her speak. It's to make you feel connected to her. Oh, you saw her get ready. You saw her put on her makeup. You knew kind of what she looked like before she put on her makeup, before she put on her mask. You know, it's to make it a more personal connection. I'm not saying that that's what it actually does. I'm just saying that's the message I feel they're trying to portray.
Is it just me, or did an unprecedented number of attractive young women take up journalism about 6 years ago, and then they all just graduated, and Russia Today just happened to stumble upon all these attractive young women?
It's not just them, dude. What is it? Fox News has like 12
hire all the attractive women because journalistic universities weren't pumping out any other kind of graduate.
Yeah, they weren't, dude. They were not. The only type of people that go to journalism school are hot women.
Right. And bear in mind, these are hot women that are hot by modern day mimetic standards, right? Women in the 1930s did not look like, for the most part, did not look like the women today, right? They were much bigger, they're much broader. These trends and these, and what I'm saying is, it's not coincidence that she happens to look that kind of way, that she happens to have that kind of figure, that she wears that lipstick, that she does it in this way. These are very, very scientific decisions that are being made by a group of marketers who know how to communicate and control a message.
Yeah, I think that I have to go back and find it, but she made more than one video about some of what we're talking about, because what happened is that other lady quit on air. I forgot her name, and and basically I gotta go back a little. What happened is that Abby Martin did her show, and she was really critical of Russia. Yeah, she was like, you know, you guys just invaded Ukraine, basically. That's fucked up. I don't agree with you, more or less. I don't want to misquote, so I'm just saying, you know, generally what she said. And that was kind of like a big deal, because the show started and she just came off right away. And of course, RT the whole time was, you know, pushing the whole other message. I mean, you guys can think what you want. And then this lady whose family is from Hungary, or she's from Hungary, I don't remember, she quit on air too. And she just like, well, no, not too. Abby Martin didn't quit. She quit on air, and she said, yeah, I don't agree with what's going on. I'm going to quit on air right now. Yeah, there it is. She said she quit on air, and what did I want to say? What I want to say is that then Abby Martin, I think she did it on another network. She did some interviews about the whole thing, and it was really interesting because she was talking about her whole thing is, why does she have to go to RT in order to, you know, bring her message to such a big, to so many people? She's like, you know, I can't say what I'm saying on NBC, Fox, ABC, or NPR, and so if I go to RT, at least I can talk about, you know, these things that I'm talking about. And I even was critical of Russia on RT, so you can't say that, you know. And she said, of course, RT is, you know, has their own agenda and is pro-Russia and does all that. She said, of course it does. But she's just saying, are people as critical of NBC, ABC, Fox BBC, NPR, when they think about, are they biased too? That's the thing. And the thing is of course RT is biased and has a agenda, and of course the NBC has female journalists, ABC, Fox. I don't know. Does BBC have young female journalists too?
Yeah, of course it does. And actually, recently the BBC have been actually showing a lot of progressive thinking in that, in as much as we now have social media reporters who report from the front lines of Twitter hashtags. And okay, you shake your head, Nick, but actually I think that, okay, I don't agree with the BBC in general, although I have grown up with them and I appreciate a lot of the engineering-centric sentiment that they have. But that is kind of progressive for such an entrenched organization with such traditional values that it's at least acknowledging.
Sure. That's not why I was shaking my head. I was just shaking my head that that's a thing that exists. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, that is pretty nuts. So
we need more speech. We need everyone to understand that everyone's a journalist now, because everyone has a unique perspective. Like, if you belong to where you are, and if you're conscious and awake, maybe Nick, you could talk about The Power of Concentration, this book that you've been reading, that you've been telling us about, where people just live in this daydream. They're far too willing to be colonized by someone else, allow their mind to be hijacked by someone else. But actually, you are right now a witness to this universe that nobody else has a perspective on. Right? You can start talking about what's right in front of you right now.
Yeah, that's funny you brought that book up. The book's awesome. It has some exercises on concentrating, and it goes into the importance of concentration. Like, we let our minds wander a lot. We don't just focus on the thing we're trying to accomplish, and that includes just walking. Like in the book, he's like, when you're walking, you should only think of walking. You should walk perfect. You should have full control of your body. You should concentrate walking step after step after step until you reach where you're going, and then you concentrate on the next thing you were going to do, and you focus just on that. And it goes into, like, that's how we find success. That's how we get to the people that are also going to be successful, or the things that are going to help us get to where we need to be in life, is concentrating on where we need to be going in life, on doing what we're going to do in life. Not thinking and sitting around and planning, but doing, like we've been talking about with this thing, where you're trying to just create a DAO out of armory. But at the most basic rudimentary tools available today, we're trying to create a DAO. But we have a lot of people talking about how we have the potential in the future to create a DAO. Well, that's fine and dandy, but some people want DAOs now, and we need to do it now, so it's easier in the future, so more people can do it in the future.
So maybe a question for the people, if you're watching this. We need to know, one of the things we need to know to make this work is it possible to create a raw public address from the normal Bitcoin address? Because in order to create a multi-signature wallet, you need the big, long hexadecimal string equivalent of your public key. And I haven't yet been able to find a way of generating that without having the private key. So if anybody knows that, I'll post up a question in various forums we've been thinking about. But what would be really nice is if everyone who wants to be a part of the World Crypto Network, whether as a stakeholder, you're an audience member, whether you're a host already on the show, I don't care. Everyone gets some presents that we will link to in the Reddit and we'll link to on our website. Publish your raw public key, because then what people can do is create multi-signature wallets ad hoc, right? So you can then post publicly a lockbox, what Armory's version of the multi-sig calls a lockbox, and it's basically anyone with Armory can download this little bit of text, tiny text, goes in an email, you can be posted up anywhere, and it basically says whose public keys are allowed to spend the money in this wallet, right? So you can say, right, I really like the way Chris and Paige, interact on their videos. I'm going to create this multi-signature address that comprises of both of their public keys, and anyone who sends money to this address, only Chris and Paige will have access to. Or this is Nick and Chris's, or I don't know, Theo's and Tom's, or whatever. That's one of the ways that you take part in the discourse, is by actually, because one of the reasons I don't like governments, and particularly the C-suite of the corporation, the CEOs, is that they want to be there. That's what they've all got in common. They want power and they want it too much. And I think we need to separate the administration side of the running of the company, and just like have that be there. And for those people to be elected based on just keeping the company alive, but then you need to separate all the promises that you make and actually divide all those promises up on a project by project basis, where the individuals take full responsibility for their actions. No more of this, oh look, we created an oil spill and in the background BP will fire a bunch of its executives who are responsible, but do we ever find out their names? Did we ever see any bankers go to prison? All we heard was that there were some greedy bankers. We didn't find out who they were, where they are now. I don't want to talk to Barclays brand. I want to talk to the people in Barclays who committed the LIBOR fraud.
That's how I feel currently with Glenn Greenwald and Snowden. They've been leaking and leaking and leaking. Where are the names of the analysts who are actually doing the spying? Where is the guy who is sitting next to Snowden who is actually looking at your fucking email? What's that fool's name? That guy didn't leak it. I know Edward Snowden's name. I know he did that shit, but at least he fucking copped for his sins and came and told us all. He's protecting thousands of people, which would initially just basically stop. It would kill the NSA immediately. If you were to release all those analysts' names, they would cease to exist because they would not be able to stand the social pressure of millions and millions and millions and millions of people knowing who the fuck they are and what the fuck they did.
Well, that's a great... I think we're going to have to wrap this up, so we're going for quite a long time, but I would love to just do a whole show on what you just said. I think that's really, really important. So any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I wanted to just point at the QA real quick before, and this will just be my final thought. Jamie says we need a written mission statement. I was talking about that yesterday, and that's actually something I'm probably going to try to start working on later this week when I get a little more time. I already talked to my fiance. She's going to help me edit it and whatnot, and I'll shoot you guys like edits and stuff too. But I'll try to come up with like a mission statement.
Should we use the wiki that's built into the Reddit? I mean, should we just throw out?
Oh yeah.
Or do you think not enough people are familiar with Reddit? Because it's quite esoteric, you know. Not everyone's kind of into it. What should we do? I mean, obviously tell us in the comments below as well after the show. I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, you can put it on Reddit or GitHub or somewhere. I mean, I don't know.
Oh yeah, GitHub might be nice. Do it in Markdown.
I mean, maybe Reddit is easy. Maybe Reddit is easier to use for people. I don't know, because you can just kind of.
Yeah, it's more accessible. There's a bigger audience, I think. Okay,
then we could just do Reddit. I think that sounds easier.
Yeah. We can do both. I mean.
Sure.
You know, I mean, actually, you know what we should do? Maybe this is what the Bitcoin Foundation and other institutions like that didn't do. What should have done? They should have done more community outreach. They should have actually gone out of their way to go to all the various forums across the internet in different peer groups, different age groups, different cultures, everything like that, and actually say, look, we're doing this over here, and this is why it's important, and maybe you should care, because we're working on this technology that could very soon disintermediate the world and disintermediate the global financial system, and you should probably take an interest in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what needs to be done.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. So we came to you today with a story about the legal mythos, the fictions, the stories we tell each other, and of course what the corporation doesn't do as a piece of performance art is it doesn't tell you all the secrets behind the scenes. And I think this is a really important issue that we're facing today about who we are and what we get up to when nobody's looking, and whether or not we create those shadows for ourselves artificially, whether we give the people in those shadows the guns and the weaponry and the ability to spy on one another. I still think it raises some important philosophical questions that we completely overlook when we reduce everything down to the brand and the logo and the history of this space here and there, which I see as rather arbitrary. So please follow us on Twitter at WorldCryptoNet. Check out our new Reddit subreddit, which is r/WorldCryptoNetwork, and of course you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Mr. Chris Ellis. Thanks very much, and I will see you next time.